Brothers and sisters, during this time of pandemic, like I assume many of you, am searching for ways to kind of calm my jangled nerves, ways that I can just kind of trust in God's grace that things are going to get back to some semblance of normal. So one of the things I found as I was kind of just searching on YouTube was a nature channel called explore.org. This is set up by the United States Park Services, and it's various cameras that are fixed at locations throughout the United States and even across the world. Have I spoken to y'all about this before? Everybody nod yes or no. Okay, good. I can't even remember what's been going out online or what hasn't, so I just didn't know whether y'all had heard this or not. So I found this one particular channel on explore.org, which is set up at a place called Brooks Falls in Katmai, Katmai, National Park, Alaska. And it's a fascinating thing because, first off, it's live, and that's fascinating. But at this particular place, Brooks Falls, during the months of June, July, and August, the salmon are all running upstream to spawn, and they come to this falls area. And there's one little shallow spot where the falls make kind of an indentation. And all of the salmon are trying to jump the gap up into the river so that they can go further upstream to spawn. And it is fascinating. It's like a little dance. These fish are pirouetting and flip-flopping, and what's really fun is to watch them jump trying to go across the falls, and they're actually going all the way backwards, and then they have to start over again. These salmon are just following their instinct, and they are doing what comes naturally to salmon. Well, it also happens that at these falls there are about 10 bears. And the bears will wade into the water in order to catch the salmon and to feed on the salmon. And at one point, they even had a park ranger who kind of explained everything. He said, there's a hierarchy among bears, and the ones that have the wherewithal, they find the best spot to fish because it's difficult. I've watched these bears with such patience, just watching the water. And then suddenly you see their paw just go, and up comes a salmon. And that's the other thing about it being live. If this were a documentary or something, that's where they would cut because they don't want you watching them eat the fish. Well, this is a live camera, so I watched the bear just snack on his salmon. Now, so I was watching, and this just gives me a great sense of peace and calm because I think, there it is. Nature is going on. Bears aren't concerned about a coronavirus. The fish aren't concerned about a coronavirus. God is taking care of them. Things are just happening as they have for hundreds and hundreds and millions of years. And so I'm watching all of this one day, and I see this poor bear, who I presume is kind of low in the pecking order because he's found a particularly bad spot, and he's been trying to catch a fish and hasn't been able to, and you start to wonder, it's like me waiting for dinner to cook. It's a bit frustrating. So as I'm watching, suddenly one of these fish jumps, trying to make the gap, but he goes backwards and lands right in the mouth of the bear. I thought, that's the unluckiest fish in the world, first of all, and the luckiest bear in the world. He had about half a second to open his mouth before the salmon would have missed his mouth and escaped. So That's a long way of getting to the point that God provides, which is the message of our scriptures today. God provides. God provides for us. And God provides the finest of foods for us. We see that in the miracle of the multiplication of the loaves and the fish. Here are people who have come to hear the word of God through Jesus. They probably have no expectation of being fed. They probably know that they are going to be hungry when they leave, and that hunger will last until they get back to their homes and places where they can prepare food for themselves. And it doesn't matter. They have come to Jesus because they want to hear the words of life which he can give. And yet, Jesus, in his compassion for them in their humanity, in his humanity, he says we have to feed them. The disciples are distraught. How can we possibly feed this many people? What are you asking us to do? And Jesus asks them to find something from their resources. And they find the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. And of course, they're like, well, this is ridiculous. But again, God provides. Out of their desire to help these people, out of their desire to do God's will, they offer up what little they have. And then God, through Jesus, God provides. The 5 loaves and the 2 fish are enough to feed all the people that are there, with some left over. So, the message, brothers and sisters, is that God provides for us. How wonderful that you are here to receive what he provides in the most holy and sacred Eucharist. Many of our young people have been approaching the altar of God for First Holy Communion over the last several weeks. And it's edifying to me to see their eager young faces as the host is placed in their hand for the first time, and their realization that they are about to do something very important. So much so that they're a little bit nervous about it, but that's okay. It should be a moment in which the awesomeness of what it is we are partaking in hits us. If we start to take it for granted, if we start to say, well, it will always be there for me, we might lose something of its sacredness and importance in our lives. This pandemic has brought to home to, unfortunately, a lot of people how it may not always be there. And that can be for many reasons besides just a virus. It could be from the fact that we have fewer and fewer priests and fewer young men who are willing to offer their lives for God in order to provide the Eucharist. And so that could be something that would add to my anxiety, except that I draw back from that, and I think of that bear and that fish landing in his mouth, and I say to myself, God provides. Not in the sense that I can be complacent, not in the sense that it's not for me to continue to pray for vocations, to continue to promote vocations, to continue to offer the Mass for you all as best we can under the circumstances. It's just to say, I'm not going to let the worries of the world bring me down. Because if God can multiply 5 loaves and 2 fish to feed thousands, he'll find a way to provide for us and the church as well. Part of the way he will do that is through our own effort. We can't always wait for the miracle. We can't always wait for the chance occurrence. We have to do our part as we can to help bring about God's providence, to help him provide for others through our human instrumentality. But it is to say that in the end, we do not need to let anything disturb our peace in the understanding that God will provide for us. God has always provided for us. God brings us to this very moment in history by having provided for us. We are special and precious in his sight, more so than any bear, more so than all the bears in the world. And I believe that. I hope you do as well. So, let us take the message of the gospel today to heart, and let us recognize how awesome a gift God is giving us right here and now in being able to receive his sacred body and blood of his Son in the most holy Eucharist.